The silent massacre. The bridge of the Corathan battlecruiser Nightfall hummed with the quiet confidence of a predator stalking weak prey. Supreme Commander Vextor stood before the tactical display, his 6 eyes examining the scattered dots representing human colonies throughout the system. His gray-scaled skin shifted color slightly, a sign of contempt among his species. The humans had spread themselves thin across 7 worlds, like seeds scattered carelessly by wind. His tactical advisor, Sub-Commander Krell, approached with measured steps, datapad in his primary arms while his secondary arms gestured at the display. The analysis was complete, and what they found was almost insulting. These humans possessed basic space travel, primitive weapons, and colonies that looked more like scattered villages than fortified positions. The great Corathan Empire, which had conquered 43 star systems over 3 centuries, had been summoned to deal with this. Vextor's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. The Galactic Council had warned them about humanity's expansion, speaking in hushed tones about their potential threat. Now, seeing their actual capabilities, it was clear the Council consisted of cowards. These humans were nothing more than primitive mammals who had stumbled into space travel by accident. Their ships were small, their weapons outdated, and their defenses laughable. The decision came without ceremony or debate. Vextor raised his primary arm, and the fleet acknowledged with silent efficiency. 200 warships spread out in perfect formation, each one assigned to specific targets. There would be no warnings, no demands for surrender. The Corathan way was simple and effective. Total annihilation sent a clearer message than any words ever could. The first colony never saw them coming. Located on a small moon orbiting a gas giant, the mining settlement hosted 12,000 humans who had spent years extracting precious minerals from the rocky surface. Children played in pressure domes while their parents worked the mines. Scientists studied the gas giant's storms. Engineers maintained the life support systems that kept everyone alive. In 17 minutes, it was all gone. The Corathan weapons were precise and merciless. Energy beams carved through the protective domes like paper, exposing everything inside to the vacuum of space. The emergency broadcasts lasted only seconds before the transmission towers were vaporized. Ships trying to flee were picked off one by one, their debris joining the expanding cloud of destruction that had once been humanity's furthest outpost. The second colony tried to fight back. Their early warning systems gave them 3 minutes to prepare, enough time for their small defense force to launch. 27 fighters rose to meet the Corathan fleet, their pilots knowing they faced impossible odds but refusing to yield. They managed to damage one enemy corvette before being systematically eliminated. The colony below watched their defenders fall like shooting stars before their own destruction began. Cities turned to glass under the sustained bombardment. Forests that had taken decades to cultivate burned in seconds. Oceans boiled away, leaving only scarred basins where life had thrived moments before. The Corathans were thorough, ensuring nothing larger than a pebble remained intact. When they moved on, the planet looked as if it had never known life at all. Hidden in the shadow of a small asteroid, Observation Post Echo 7 drifted in deliberate obscurity. The station was tiny, designed for long-range monitoring rather than combat. Inside, 3 officers watched their screens fill with impossible images. Lieutenant Sarah Chen gripped her console as colony after colony went dark, their final transmissions painting a picture of systematic genocide. Commander James Harrison stood frozen, watching the tactical display update with each destroyed settlement. Beside him, Engineer Miguel Rodriguez frantically recorded every piece of data their sensors could capture. They watched the third colony's destruction in real time, saw the Corathan fleet moving with casual precision from one target to the next. The enemy wasn't just winning, they were exterminating. When the sensors detected Corathan ships turning in their direction, Harrison snapped into action. They had minutes at most. Chen initiated emergency protocols while Rodriguez transferred all recorded data to their courier ship, Whisper. The small vessel wasn't built for combat, but it had one advantage over everything else in the system. It was fast. They broke dock with seconds to spare. Corathan weapons fire scorched the asteroid behind them as Whisper accelerated beyond safe limits. The ship groaned under the strain, its frame never designed for such punishment. Chen pushed the engines harder, knowing they had one chance to jump to hyperspace before the enemy weapons found their mark. The first hit took out their shields. The second tore through their port stabilizer. Then space twisted around them, and they were gone. Back on the Corythan flagship, Sub-Commander Krell reported the escape with mild interest. One small ship had fled, likely carrying news of their attack. Vextor dismissed it with a wave of his secondary arm. Let them run. Let them tell their Earth about what happened here. Fear would spread faster than their fleet ever could. By the time humanity organized any response, there would be nothing left to save. The whisper materialized near Neptune Station, Earth's outermost defense post. The ship was barely holding together, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Emergency teams swarmed the vessel as it limped into dock, pulling the 3 survivors from the wreckage. Within an hour, Admiral Victoria Walsh stood in the command center watching the recovered footage in stunned silence. The emergency session of Earth's Defense Council convened within 3 hours. President Marcus Cole sat at the head of the table, his face grave as the images played on the main screen. General Alan Pierce watched Colonies burn with the detached analysis of a career soldier, already calculating response times and tactical options. Admiral Walsh remained standing, her jaw clenched as she watched humanity's children die in silence. The room filled with voices as the initial shock wore off. Some called for immediate retaliation, others argued for evacuation, scattering humanity across the galaxy to ensure survival. A few suggested negotiation, though they were quickly silenced when the tactical analysis showed the Corythan fleet's trajectory. They were coming to Earth, and at their current pace, humanity had perhaps 3 weeks to prepare. President Cole raised his hand for silence. The debate ended. Earth would not run. Earth would not negotiate. Earth would fight. The order went out across the planet and to every remaining human settlement. Total mobilization. Every ship, every weapon, every able-bodied person who could hold a rifle. Humanity had been pushed to the edge of extinction. Now it was time to push back. In deep space, the Corythan fleet continued its methodical advance. They stopped at 2 more systems along the way, destroying small outposts and supply stations with the same casual efficiency. Vextor studied the human response, noting their gathering fleet near Earth with amusement. They were consolidating their forces for one last stand. How predictably primitive. They would mass their ships in defense of their homeworld, and the Corythans would destroy them all in a single, glorious battle. What Vextor didn't notice were the small sensor anomalies appearing in his fleet's wake, tiny fluctuations that his scanners dismissed as background radiation. Each one marked the position of a human stealth probe, carefully documenting the Corythan formation, analyzing their weapons, studying their tactics. The data streamed back to Earth in encrypted bursts, where teams of scientists and military strategists worked around the clock. Admiral Walsh stood on the bridge of the battleship Retribution, Earth's newest and most powerful warship. Around her, 300 vessels of various sizes formed up in defensive positions. It wasn't enough to match the Corythan fleet ship for ship, but it didn't need to be. Humanity had learned something important from the footage of their colony's destruction. The Corythans were arrogant. They fought with overwhelming force but predictable tactics. They had never faced an enemy who could adapt, who could learn, who could sacrifice everything for victory. The first human colony ship launched from Earth as the fleet prepared for battle. Then another and another. If Earth fell, humanity would survive elsewhere. But Walsh didn't intend to fall. She studied the tactical display, noting the asteroid field between Earth and Mars. It would make an interesting battlefield, full of places to hide, obstacles to manipulate. The Corythans thought they were coming to execute a defenseless species. They were about to learn why humanity had survived every challenge their own world had thrown at them. Humanity's wrath. The Corythan fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system with the confidence of executioners arriving at their appointed task. Supreme Commander Vextor stood at his command station, watching the human fleet arranged in defensive positions near the asteroid belt. His tactical display showed 300 human vessels against his 200, but numbers meant nothing when the technology gap was so vast. It would be like steel against stone. What Vextor didn't see were the modifications humanity had made in 3 weeks of desperate preparation. Mining charges had been planted throughout the asteroid field. Civilian ships had been retrofitted with weapons. Most importantly, Every piece of recovered Corythan technology from the destroyed observation post had been analyzed and countered. Humanity might not have superior firepower, but they had something the Corythans had never encountered: adaptation born from desperation. Admiral Walsh watched the enemy fleet approach with calm determination. Her bridge crew worked in focused silence, everyone understanding what was at stake. The battleship Retribution led the human formation, flanked by the carriers Independence and Defiance. Behind them, everything humanity could muster waited in carefully planned positions. The Corythans moved in their standard attack formation, the same one they had used to destroy the colonies. Predictable. The first phase of the human plan activated when the Corythan fleet entered the asteroid field. Hidden among the floating rocks, small automated drones powered up. Each one carried a simple payload: electromagnetic pulse generators salvaged from Earth's nuclear arsenals. They weren't powerful enough to disable Corythan shields, but they could cause momentary fluctuations. In space combat, moments mattered. Vextor noticed the energy signatures too late. The pulse wave washed over his fleet, causing shields to flicker and sensors to scramble for precious seconds. In that window, humanity struck. Missiles launched from concealed positions throughout the asteroid field, hundreds of them converging on the Corythan formation. Most were destroyed by point defense, but some found their marks. The mighty Corythan fleet took its first real casualties of the war. The surprise lasted only moments before Corythan discipline reasserted itself. Their return fire was devastating, carving through asteroids and human ships alike. The destroyer Sol vanished in a ball of fire. The cruiser Berlin broke in half under sustained beam fire. But for every human ship that fell, two more seemed to emerge from the asteroid field's shadows. Walsh had learned from the colony's destruction. Concentration meant death. Dispersion meant survival. Sub-Commander Krell reported damage to 3 warships, his voice carrying confusion. The human weapons shouldn't have been able to penetrate their shields, yet somehow they had. Analysis showed the humans had modified their missiles, adding rotating frequency modulators that cycled through thousands of configurations per second until finding gaps in the shield harmonics. It was crude but effective. The humans were learning even as they fought. The battle turned into a brutal melee within the asteroid field. Human fighters, too small for Corythan targeting systems to track effectively, swarmed larger ships like insects. They died by the dozens, but each one carried fusion charges that detonated against Corythan hulls. The battlecruiser Darkness Eternal, pride of the Corythan Third Fleet, listed to one side as multiple explosions tore through its engine compartments. Captain Lisa Park led her fighter squadron in what everyone knew was a suicide run. Their target was the Corythan command ship, Nightfall itself. They weaved through beam fire and debris, watching friends die around them until only 3 fighters remained. Park's voice came through the static calm despite everything. She armed her fusion charge and accelerated to maximum speed. The explosion against Nightfall's shields accomplished nothing except marking humanity's refusal to surrender. Vextor watched the small craft destroy themselves against his shields with something approaching respect. These humans fought like cornered animals, spending their lives for minimal gain, but minimal gains were adding up. His fleet had lost 30 ships, more than in any engagement in the past century. Still, victory was assured. The human fleet was down to half strength and Earth lay exposed behind them. Then the second phase of humanity's plan revealed itself. From the far side of Earth's moon, a new force emerged, 50 ships that hadn't been there during the initial scan. They were civilian vessels, cruise liners and cargo haulers, but each one had been packed with nuclear weapons and set to autopilot. They accelerated toward the Corythan fleet at maximum burn, a wall of improvised missiles that would arrive just as the enemy cleared the asteroid field. The Corythans responded with massed fire, destroying the approaching ships one by one, but each destruction created an expanding cloud of radioactive debris, fouling sensors and creating electromagnetic interference. Through this chaotic storm, the real attack came. Admiral Walsh had held back Earth's most capable ships, and now they struck at the blinded enemy fleet with coordinated precision. The Retribution's main guns, modified with recovered Corythan technology, punched through the battlecruiser Voidwalker's shields and tore its command deck apart. The Independence launched its entire fighter complement in a concentrated assault on the Corythan supply ships, knowing that without logistics support, even the mighty Corythan fleet would eventually falter. Humanity was trading lives for time, ships for strategic advantage. Vextor finally understood what he was facing. Not a primitive species fumbling with technology they didn't understand, but a race that had survived predators, ice ages, plagues, and wars that had shaped them into something the comfortable Corythan Empire had never encountered. Humans learned from every death, adapted to every challenge, and fought with the desperate fury of those who had nothing left to lose. The battle raged for 6 hours. When the radioactive clouds cleared, both fleets had been devastated. The Corythan force had lost half its ships and was struggling with damaged systems from the electromagnetic attacks. The human fleet was down to 70 vessels, most heavily damaged. But Earth still stood, and reinforcements were arriving from Mars and the outer colonies. More importantly, humanity had captured 3 damaged Corythan vessels, their technology already being studied and replicated. Vextor made the only logical decision. He ordered a retreat, something no Corythan fleet had done in over a century. As his remaining ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, he sent one final transmission to Earth. It was meant as a promise of return, a vow of vengeance. What he received in response chilled him to his core. Admiral Walsh's voice, calm and cold, speaking words that would haunt him. This was humanity holding back. "Follow us home and we'll show you what total war really means." The Corythan fleet jumped away, but humanity wasn't finished. Using the captured ship's navigation data, they learned the location of the Corythan Empire. Within a month, reverse-engineered drives were being installed in every available human vessel. The colonies might be gone, but humanity had learned something valuable from their destruction. Sometimes survival meant becoming the monster your enemies feared. 6 months later, Corythan frontier worlds began going dark. Not destroyed like the human colonies, but conquered. Their population subdued and their technology seized. Humanity spread through Corythan space like a virus, using captured technology and tactics learned from their enemy's own playbook. They struck without warning, adapted to every defense, and showed the same mercy they had been shown. None. The siege of the Corythan homeworld lasted 3 days. By then, humanity had assembled a fleet of over 1,000 ships. Many built using Corythan technology improved with human innovation. Vextor stood in the ruins of his command center, watching human dropships descend through the burning atmosphere. He had dismissed them as primitives, weak prey unworthy of respect. Now he understood the truth. Humanity wasn't prey. They were survivors, shaped by a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. And when pushed to the edge, survivors did whatever it took to endure. President Cole's address to the Galactic Council was broadcast from the former Corythan throne room. His words were simple and direct. Humanity wanted peace, would always choose peace when possible. But anyone who destroyed human colonies, who murdered human children, who thought humanity was weak because they chose diplomacy over war, would learn the same lesson the Corythan Empire had learned. Earth protected its own, and the galaxy would remember what happened to those who forgot that truth.